Welcome to the Luke Macias Show. A lot of people are voting early. We're going to break down who's voting and what that means for where Texas is likely headed. And Jeff Leach, who has already shown that he doesn't understand appropriate lanes between the three branches of government, went so far as to try to sway a judge with direct communication, which is definitely against the law. And we're going to break down just how troubling the actions are of the individuals who are trying to act inappropriately to prevent a execution that that the judges and the juries and the executive branches have determined should proceed. Let's get to the show. Today's show is brought to you by Texas Scorecard, but I am drinking Celsius, okay? So I don't know why I've decided to give you all my drink of choice, because I did that last week. And then people reached out and everyone had an opinion on iced coffee, especially iced coffee at Whataburger. But I'm drinking Celsius. Here's the thing, guys. I didn't used to have any energy drinks in my house, and they say Celsius is like the healthiest, right? I mean, I definitely drank energy drinks when I was like in high school, but I haven't done so in a while. And this sounds over dramatic, but I'm telling you, with a fourth child and the newborn phase and everything else, I have cut out the time that it takes for me to make my cappuccino in the morning. And so I'm stuck with these things that I can just get or grab or run through on my way. And so sadly, it just continues to take me in a downward spiral against this high quality, nice coffee I like drinking and towards just anything that will give me enough energy to get through the day. But I'm drinking this. I'm here. It's Wednesday morning, and I want to talk about who all has voted. Now, I've been looking at a couple different reports this morning just to try to get you the most recent numbers possible. The most recent numbers possible. I will tell you, over 6 million people have cast ballots so far. And if you look at the trajectory, we've finally matched or slightly eclipsed the 2020 numbers. So the amount of people that voted in 2020 have finally been slightly eclipsed. We were there for a while just under the 2020 numbers. And the reason I would say for that is largely due to the fact that during COVID, there were so many mail-in ballot options. There was expanded early voting. So people were going in to vote and not voting on election day during that election. But we are over 6 million people who have cast ballots in this election so far. We have reached or slightly eclipsed the 2020 numbers. And the reality is, I'm going to tell you, you're going to see all these reports across the nation, right? Republicans are turning out. And I talked to you a little bit about this, but I do believe that there is still some level of Republican energy that's being reflected in the early vote. That is election day voters that are moving to early voters instead. And so that is probably giving us a slightly larger margin than we would previously anticipate. But the reality is that the biggest sign of encouragement, which is less encouraging than it was a week ago. I'll give you that to put this in context. But Democrats still are several 100,000 votes under the amount of Democrat votes they should have banked at this time. Okay. Now, at one point, that gap was like 400,000 or 500,000. I mean, they were like 400,000 or 500,000 Democrat votes under where they should be at this point in the election. Republicans are going to win election day. We better. And we need to keep telling people we know and love and who are patriots to vote. But we should win election day. Right now, we have a wider Republican margin of the votes than we would anticipate having. Some of that's due to Republicans coming out a little earlier than normal, but some of it's also due to this gap. Now, the gap has been eaten away. So like I said, mid last week, it was 450,000 less Democrat votes than should have voted at the time. And the last I checked, and there's literally numbers coming in, and some counties reported last night who voted on Tuesday, and some people won't report till midday today. And so you're kind of trying to get all this data at once. But I will tell you that as of the latest evaluation, there's still several 100,000 votes under what they would have been at this time in 2020. So not only are we at the same numbers, but the Democrat primary voters make up a smaller portion of the pie than they have historically. That's hugely beneficial when it comes to down ballot races. A week out from the election, I start to question everything. I really do. And I at some point would like to get to a point in my life where I don't do that, right? I'd never have those episodes, but I really do. At some point in time, I start to question, what if we have no idea where these suburban white voters are going? What if we don't know? And then you try to work with people to shore up each and every district you can see in an attempt to make sure that Republicans hold on to as much as possible. The early vote that is happening right now still looks good for Republicans, but I will say that Sunday and Monday, and I haven't seen a full statewide evaluation of Tuesday, but on Sunday and Monday, Democrats outvoted Republicans. So Sunday and Monday is when we saw Democrats start to eat into the Republican lead statewide. If that trend continues from Democrats, then the statewide modeled Republican voters, there's two different ways of looking at these voters. You can look at the primary voter bucket and leave the rest unaffiliated, or you can go in and actually assign them. In most states, or in many states, you register as a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a libertarian or whatever. And so you register with your party. We don't do that in Texas. And so if you're a primary voter, we know what bucket to put you in, but everybody else gets modeled. And so they get run through these filters of these PhDs in data analytics who then put them in these different buckets based on the kind of home they live in, their age, their sex, information that we know about them. You can tag data to these voters, right? So you can kind of find out information about them and go, oh, these people have this affinity or have this commercial purchasing history, so they're more likely to be a Republican or a Democrat. And then you run them through filters and you put them in these different buckets. Now, Republicans still right now maintain probably a 750,000 vote advantage amongst the 6 million votes that have been cast. That's a pretty good advantage to have. But that being said, it's 250,000 less than it was just several days ago. So if that trend continues, then Democrats are going to eat away and start to come into parity with Republicans. So if you think we've got this thing in the bag, don't. And I am concerned about who will show up to vote early in the last couple days of early voting. Thursday and Friday, of course, are always the busiest days of early voting ever. And so if you know patriots, you need to reach out to them. You need to make sure they took time out of their week to go in and bank their vote. Look, Republicans have always maintained significant cash advantages when it comes to where Democrats are in Texas. And that's something that is good. It's something that will keep our state, likely continue to keep our state in a strong red position, because Republicans just have a lot more infrastructure. We're working much harder to actually keep these different areas and communities red. I've talked about this, but Williamson County and Tarrant County and Denton County and Collin County and Fort Bend County, these are suburban areas that are very competitive that we need to keep fighting for. One of the advantages Republicans have is that we're just more engaged and doing a lot more at the local level to try to move these communities and keep them red or move them back to red where we can. While we're doing that all across the state, while conservatives and Republicans are working together all across the state to keep all of these districts red, Dade Phelan is really only honing in on a handful of races in districts where he thinks he has the vote to remain speaker. And so if you look at the vast majority of Republicans out there. They're helping across the board. They're helping in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas. They're helping Don McLaughlin pick up that seat in Uvalde that's been held by Democrats for 33 years. They're helping Caroline Harris in the Williamson County area, but they're also helping Lacey Hull in Harris County or Angie Chen Button in Dallas County. People are trying to help people across the board. And David Cook just, when he, a couple weeks ago, actually put out a message to a lot of his colleagues saying, hey, here's all these races. Please get involved. Please donate. Please financially support all of these individuals who are running to maintain a Republican majority. But on the 8-day report that showed the last 30 days of activity, Dade Phelan had only donated to Janie Lopez, John Lujan, Lacey Hull, Morgan Meyer, Angie Chen Button. And then he gave just a little bit to Brad Buckley, $6,750. I'm assuming that's for like a poll that he helped cover, but the rest was just cash support. Again, there are a lot more than 5 competitive legislative districts right now. But the sitting Republican Speaker of the House is only focused on a handful because the reality is he knows a lot of the other Republicans that are in these districts that Republicans would like to hold do not support his continued uniparty reign. So if you want to know why Dade Phelan is not trying to pick up the Tracy King seat in Uvalde that has been held by a Democrat for 33 years, it's because if the Republican wins Don McLaughlin, it's harder for him to maintain his speakership. If you're wondering why he's not actively supporting a Caroline Harris in the final 30 days of the election, it's because she has made it clear she wants to reform the Texas House. She wants to get rid of Democrat chairs. She wants to speed up the process. She wants Republican priorities actually voted on. That's not what Dade Phelan wants. He doesn't want a transparent calendars committee. He doesn't want priorities moving in a timely fashion. He doesn't want Democrats to be significantly decreased in their power and influence. So he's not giving to Caroline Harris in the final 30 days of the election. Dade Phelan is focused on keeping a handful of the more moderate Republicans elected in an effort to make sure that he has the votes to maintain his speakership. But if Democrats happen to inch out in a couple districts, that doesn't hurt him. In fact, it helps him. Half of the competitive Republican seats up in November for half of them, it would be more advantageous for the Democrat to win for Dade Phelan. And you're seeing that when they sit down in whatever room they sit down in to make the decision on the checks they're going to write, they hold back financial support in most of these districts. And they give a little bit to the moderates that they are focused on keeping, because that is their coalition. Their coalition are moderates and Democrats. It's their coalition. That's how they're going to stay in power. I talked last week about the Robert Roberson case, and this is probably now become the most high-profile death penalty case in recent Texas history. There was Robert Reed and also Melissa Lucio, but this has become a much bigger case. I talked last week about just how dangerous it is for Republicans and Democrats in the Texas House to be inappropriately trying to exercise their authority well beyond what they were given. We have 3 branches of government, right? The judiciary, the executive, and the legislative. In this situation, and what I'm going to say here is also backed up by our governor and by the attorney general. But what we have here is a legislative branch that is well outside of its authority. And it has decided that it doesn't respect juries. It has decided that it doesn't respect judges. It has decided that it doesn't respect the executive branch. It's decided that it doesn't respect the pardon and paroles board that is going to make its decision. All of these hoops that you have to jump through. I go back to the fact that it is very, 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 very hard to not only have a jury deliver the death penalty, but then to actually see that come to fruition. And so all of these hoops are created to make it nearly impossible. And these local prosecutors, these local counties have to spend millions of dollars of county money to ensure that they actually fulfill the mandate of the jury and delivered justice for this small 2-year-old girl whose life was taken by her father. Now, the legislature has just decided until the judiciary and executive branch do what they want them to do, they are not going to let the wheels of justice move. And if you were to push back to me and say, Luke, I'm not sure if the legislative branch really is in that position. And when I say that, it, of course, is limited to the Texas House of Representatives. There was one Democrat senator, Nathan Johnson, I think, from Dallas. It was so funny. Kronda Timish was like, oh, our colleagues in the Senate are coming around. It's like, no, there's one very liberal Democrat in the Senate that came to your aid, which shouldn't surprise anybody. If you were to push back and say, hey, maybe they haven't, maybe that's not their opinion. Maybe that's not their understanding. That was all put to bed. That debate was ended when it came out that Jeff Leach had decided to text now identified Judge Michelle Slaughter about this case. The Court of Criminal Appeals have made numerous rulings on the Robert Roberson case. Numerous rulings on the Robert Roberson case. One was unanimous. One was ruled 6-3. And the very last one they ruled on was when the Texas House tried to stop the execution. And they said, you're not allowed to do this. This is completely inappropriate. And that ruling was made 5-4. 5-4. So you'll hear this from individuals who are trying to stop justice from occurring in this situation. And they will say things like, well, the Court of Criminal Appeals went from 9-0 to 6-3 to 5-4. And they didn't do that on Robert Roberson's innocence or whether he needs a new trial. They were different questions being asked to them at different times. And all 3 times the Court of Criminal Appeals has ruled against Roberson, and all 3 times the Texas House Committee on Criminal Justice has ignored their rulings. So let's be clear. There is zero respect that committee has for the Court of Criminal Appeals. Those judges are not allowed to be judges unless they do what that committee wants them to do. So Jeff Leach decides that this 5-4 decision indicates that 4 of the judges are in his back pocket. He can get them to do whatever he wants to do until he gets what he wants. So he decides to text one of the other judges, now identified as Michelle Slaughter. And here's what he texts her. Judge, this is from him, quote, Judge, I've racked my brain about whether I should send you this message, about where I even can send you this message legally and ethically. Being that I am not a party to active litigation in front of the Court of Criminal Appeals, nor an attorney representing any active party, and being that I've made comments publicly, I simply am compelled to send you this message. One judge. That's all that is needed to simply say, there are too many questions and too many holes and too much uncertainty, and Robert Roberson deserves a new trial. Judge Alcala communicated to the committee that the Court of Criminal Appeals can, sua sponte, do so. And that's my hope and prayer. Only sending this message to you and you alone, as my friend and as a wonderful judge who I have so much faith in, I hope you'll consider doing so. Michelle Slaughter responded by saying that this is an ex parte communication. She's saying, you cannot communicate to me this way. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about why we have amicus briefs, okay? So multiple people have been filing and submitting amicus briefs to the Supreme Court or to the Court of Criminal Appeals at different times, right? And one was submitted that was signed by Cody Harrison, Greg Bonin, and Tom Oliverson, and Briscoe Kane, and Tony Tinderholt, and Cecil Bell, and Mark DeRazio. A great group of people that was saying, hey, Supreme Court, this committee does not act on our behalf. They do not speak for the Texas House of Representatives. And we look at the facts of this case and think that they're acting inappropriately. I'm summarizing, 8 pages of content. And so the reason that they have to put an amicus brief together, they have to sign it, and they have to submit it to the court, even though all of those legislators likely personally know Supreme Court judges, is because that is the way we have set up a structure to ensure that justice is delivered. You know what they can't do? They can't all just text their buddies on the Supreme Court and go, well, I donated to that Supreme Court judge and, I don't know where he's at, or, oh, that Supreme Court judge, his mom's my constituent. We went to law school together. I'll just text him, hey, bud, don't do this. Make sure to put Jeff Leach in his place. They don't do that. Instead, they put something together, it's written, it's clearly communicated, they put their name to it, and they submit it to the court. So the court still gets this information. Jeff Leach could say, one judge needs to do this. He could submit that to the Court of Criminal Appeals, right? But he didn't want to. He didn't want to do it in a transparent way. When he does that, we all see him do it, right? Which is also why he couldn't just send one note just to Michelle and be like, you and I are friends, please just be the one vote that switches. But he did. And he qualifies it. He basically goes in going, I've kind of racked my brain. I'm pretty sure if I go through this little list, I really technically am not a party to anything. By the way, just the week before, he was a lawyer arguing before the Court of Criminal Appeals, supposedly representing the Texas House of Representatives in front of the court, which then went to the Supreme Court, which shouldn't have, because the Court of Criminal Appeals is the final say on issues of a criminal matter. So he knows he's kind of tiptoeing around. And then he tells her, one judge. All we need is one judge. Completely inappropriate. Completely inappropriate. The Texas House does not know their limitations right now. Now, I wouldn't say this is representative of every single member. As I said, quite a few of these members submitted a brief to the Supreme Court saying they don't speak for us. This is not the way our chamber should behave. But quite a few Republicans and Democrats in the Texas House do not understand how our justice system works. And they do not understand the danger of declaring yourself as a chamber the judge, jury, and executioner. I've said this before. If the Texas House thinks you're guilty, example being Ken Paxton, their attitude is to heck with the rule of law. We're the judge, the jury, the executioner. We're the prosecutor. We're the jury, right? They told all the guys, hey, we're like the grand jury. Oh, really? We're like the grand jury? Yeah, just vote to convict him because it's just the grand jury. Oh, okay. And then they're like, we're all the prosecutors. Now we're going, right? They're like, we fulfill every function of determining Ken Paxton's guilt. And if the Senate agrees with us, they're a great chamber. And if they don't, they're bought and paid for. That's the attitude of the Texas House if they are convinced you're guilty. And now it looks like if they're convinced you're innocent, it doesn't matter. To heck with the prosecution, to heck with the juries, to heck with the judges, to heck with the executive branch. That's what Greg Abbott is arguing in front of the Supreme Court. He's like, I have the authority to stay in execution. I can pause it for 30 days without anybody's input. I can pause it for 180 days if the Board of Paroles and Pardons says we recommend an extension. And I can even do that. And then that can continue to give more time to go to the court systems to get different rulings. And that's usually after they've exhausted dozens of rulings in front of the courts. All of these things are put in place to be able to protect the justice system. This committee's determination was to heck with all of that. Until those people agree with us, they don't get to move. The wheels of justice don't get to turn. And that's not a just system. That's dangerously disrupting a system of justice that is the best system in the world. Now, we can get into the details of the case. I don't think that's necessary at this time because there's so much out there on this. It is very unfortunate to see this saga continue and to see such clear lines crossed. It's not surprising. If you're willing to cross the line and say, we as a legislative body are actually the judicial branch and the executive branch as well, it shouldn't surprise you that one of them would actually text a judge ex parte and say, hey, come on, be the one. Just flip. We'll get a new trial. Take this thing out. He ends with, as a wonderful judge, I have so much faith in. As my friend and as a wonderful judge who I have so much faith in. That's a lie. I'm sorry. It's a lie. And I don't use the word lie all the time because it kind of has lost its meaning in politics. But that is a lie. Michelle Slaughter has ruled 3 times on Robert Roberson's case. And she's ruled against Robert Roberson. Jeff Leach has no faith in her. He has no faith in her. He has not respected a single ruling she's made. And if she makes a ruling against Robert Roberson again, he won't respect that either. Because he does not have faith in her. He does not think she's a wonderful judge. She's only a wonderful judge if she tells Jeff Leach what he wants to hear. That is not how our system of government was made.
Hey folks, Chris Salcedo here. I've got something special for you, the Salcedo Storm podcast. As your friendly, liberty-loving Latino, I bring you a mix of engaging discussions to help us fight for our state and our conservative values. It's the perfect way to stay informed and engaged in what's happening around you. So, what are you waiting for? Don't miss out on the storm of information and entertainment coming your way. The Salcedo Storm podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
That's not how it was structured. It is an abuse that Jeff Leach is behaving this way. And it's time for the Texas House of Representatives to shut this down, to stop, to back away, and to recognize they've gone too far. When I come to you next week, the election will have been concluded. And that is it's just a big season of life, right? We've come a long way, if you think about it, from the last legislative session to the impeachment of Ken Paxton to the fight over education freedom for parents to a very contentious primary to a very contentious runoff to a very contentious Republican Party of Texas convention that maintained conservative leadership to a very active general election that will then lead into another opportunity next session to enact conservative policy. And I'm hoping to come to you in a timely manner next week. There's a chance I might be up in North Texas on Tuesday. And so I'm trying to figure out whether I'm going to try to film up there or film down here later on Wednesday. Maybe the show comes out Thursday. I don't know. There's some things up in the air because Election Day is Election Day. And then normally I just film Wednesday mornings. It might be a little harder to just film Wednesday morning again. So I'm figuring some of those details out. But know that there will be a lot less questions when I come to you next week. A lot of things will have figured themselves out. And any of your friends that are patriots in Texas will have either participated in that process or not. You're already going to. I know that. You don't watch or listen to this show if you're somebody who's just checking in and not engaged in the process. But so many of your friends have not. And so reach out to them if you know that they are patriots and make sure that they participate in this incredible experiment which we call the United States of America and the state of Texas. May God bless you, and may God bless the great state of Texas.
Do you want to get your news from people who share your values? Texas Scorecard. Real news for real Texans.